Karen, thank you for taking time to sit with us. We have interviewed and spoken with a lot of people who have written on the topic of coaching. And I'm not saying this to blow your trumpet for you, but this is certainly the most comprehensive, cohesive, single view of an approach to doing this.
Thank you.
And we should be doing a series of between 3 and 5 conversations if what we wanted to do, if our goal was to actually cover what all is in the book. But if you're okay with it, I think what I'd like is just to have a free flowing conversation, because besides being an author, a co-author actually, with there's in total 5 of you on
Yes.
the byline for this book, so that's really something. But besides being an author, you've seen coaching and coactive coaching from a ton of angles. Doing it yourself, teaching other people to do it, teaching other people to teach other people to do it, and just building your own practice. So just a lot we can cover. So if it's okay with you, let's just jump in the river and sort of go where the current takes us. Yeah,
that sounds great.
Lovely. Well, can I just ask you right at the outset, I mentioned that there's these 4 other folks. So you've got Henry and Philip, Laura, and it's either Alexis or Alexi. Tell me about the process and who those folks are and what it's like writing with a team like that.
Well, for the coactive coaching book, there actually are 4 core authors: myself and my husband Henry, Phil Sandall, and Laura Whitworth. Laura Whitworth was our original founding partner of the Coaches Training Institute. She started this in 1992. She passed away in 2007 of lung cancer.
Oh, wow.
And Phil also passed away. He died a couple of years ago. When we first got ready to write the book, very first in 1995, I think somebody approached Laura at a conference or something. We knew that while we wanted the process to be collaborative, the book needed to have a voice. Yes. And that was Phil Sandall. Phil was actually a professional writer, and he is the voice of the book. So from the first edition all the way through, we're on our 4th edition now, Phil was the one who took input from myself, my husband, and Laura initially, and then myself and my husband, and crafted it into a cohesive document that somebody could follow and read, because otherwise all those people giving input would have just been a mishigas.
Well, you've disabused me of this idea of perfect harmony among 4 authors, which seemed implausible. So yeah.
Well, especially for us, our work was born of argument and disagreement and hammering things out. So
yes,
we would have never got it done if we had tried to write it together.
Yeah, I was like, this is really the ultimate testament to co-activity for authors. Well, great. And can you maybe, for those who will pick this book up and start to look into the approach that you discuss, just describe all the other things that go around this in terms of the folks that you've taught and enabled, and the way that this was built, and the institute.
Well, like I said, we started out in 1992 with pretty much not much. I mean, we were going to do some workshops, and it grew into a global organization. And so that so far exceeded our ability to ever imagine what it would be. And it became obvious around 2007 that we weren't going to be able to meet the demand for people who wanted to learn this particular approach to coaching. So we created a year-long leadership program to train people to do what we did. And one of the things I'm most proud of at CTI, our business, is that we were able to recreate ourselves and have people, I think, who do the training work as well or better than we could. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they've all gone through this year-long leadership program where we taught them our particular approach to coaching and leading.
Yeah, yeah. The number tens of thousands came up, and I guess that's achievable when you have such a great long and consistent runway.
And so many wonderful people who came to play. We have coaches working in all the major languages. We have coaches and trainers working on, most of the continents. And that's not a function of how savvy and bright we were. There were just a lot of really good people who came and wanted to participate and be involved. I'm really proud of our faculty and our leader body.
Well, I think you should be. That's quite an accomplishment. It's a testament to something that you've either created or come upon, or at least shone a light on. That many other folks kind of endorsed the approach. I think there's one thing in particular that comes a little near the end, which is that when you have this coach and coachee relationship, you could actually be playing the coach now could actually be playing many roles. And I think a question that came up for my team and will come up for some other readers is, how do you select among them? So you could at once be, or at any given time, be boss, friend, confidant, mentor, leader, manager, et cetera, and I think that in my experience, folks who are learning to do this discipline get caught on the skewer of, I don't know which one of these to choose in the moment.
Yeah. In the coactive approach, we have something called designed alliance, which we talk about in the book, and it's a relationship by design. So we're talking consciously about the roles that I'm going to play and the roles that you're going to play, and making some agreements about what's going to work for everybody, and who I need to be here and who I need to be and what the role is that I'm playing. So once you bring that to consciousness, then I think it's so much easier to hold on to a specific role and to know what you're about and what you're doing, because my function as a boss and my function as a coach are really different. They're not the same thing. And so in my designed alliance, I can talk a lot about the relationship we're having right now is between coach and client, and we design that together.
Well, there's another thing that I think you're
too.
Yes,
oh
please.
Go ahead. No, ask your question. No, you ask your question.
Well, if it snuffs out the idea you had going, please return to it.
Okay. So first of all, there's the coaching relationship. I'm a professional coach and I'm coaching you. You are my client. We have a professional agreement. That's one application of the work we do. But there's a whole other application where coaching really blends in the day-to-day. So when I was a boss and a manager at CTI, I was the CEO of CTI for many years. Coaching and coaching skills were very much a part of how I led. And that's different than the formal coaching relationship. So in the formal coaching relationship, you need to do what I said. You need to be really clear. I am a coach, you're my client. But when it blends into the day-to-day, it's not as important to pull things apart and to let yourself really apply whatever you feel the moment most bear. Sometimes people need you to be really directive. And coaching questions are like, oh God, give it a break. Let's get going. And other times people need a little space to expand their ideas.
So what's happening on the other side then, Karen? If you as the coach shift and at one moment you're like, look, I'm going to be a leader to you now. And suppose that's kind of brokered, that's agreed. And you're like, we're going to transition. I need to be your manager at the moment because I need to move from, say leading you on the, visionary ideas and what you could be, et cetera. And we kind of need to get down to a checklist of what you're going to get done this week or something. Is there sort of a status change in the coachee so that they go from a follower to say a direct report when that transition happens?
There could be. And again, that's by designed alliance. How are we doing here? Are we still in right relationship with each other? Are you good with this? Do we need to approach this a different way? Is a conversation back and forth. So you're not just like, okay, now I'm going to be your coach. Get used to it. Now I'm going to be your manager. Get over it. Now I'm going to be a leader. Get with it. It's
Follow.
more like like follow. It's more of a back and forth. And how are we doing? Is this working for both of us?
So something that will stand out, and I think really merits some explanation, is the concept of a container. That will just be kind of foreign. It's just something that takes a little moment to understand. Can you précis for those who are yet to buy and read your book or take a course, what you mean by a container?
Yeah. So we didn't know this in the beginning. We just were going to train some coaches, but our philosophy evolved over time, and we believe that everything happens in relationship. So you and I are in a relationship now, right? You're doing an interview and I'm being interviewed, and a designed alliance creates a container about that relationship. There's a little bit of a structure. Some of it's just assumed. You're going to ask me questions, I'm going to answer. More of it's assumed. You're going to ask me great questions, and I'm going to be as honest as I can be and not too sleazy, right? And then if we needed to stop and design, if something felt funky or off to either one of us, we could stop and say, hang on just a second, I thought we were doing this, and get ourselves all straightened out, right? All of that, when that's held in the context or the container of relationship, all of that can happen. And when it's not, we just get trapped in the check off the box. We've done the interview, check, we did the doing, but the relationship was never there.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
I think it totally makes sense. That's actually incredibly concise. It took me a while to gather that, and I would say this by way of kind of feedback, because we've read across the category and held quite a number of interviews.
Yeah.
And we've been doing that because there's a real enthusiasm and interest on the part of the corporate community in Southeast Asia to say, what is coaching? I think we're supposed to be doing it. It seems attractive to us. Let's give it a try. And sometimes the only thing people are going on was like the last badminton coach they had by way of a model.
Yes.
So,
right.
So I would say that the container is something truly unique, but quite significant. And I might also add, I think it's very complementary and harmonious with the other approaches that we've read about and discussed. So I just think there's tremendous value there, and that should be. Please go ahead.
What you're saying. I like what you're saying about it. It's coaching was nowhere when we started. Nobody knew what a coach was. They thought if you were a professional coach, you were going to make them run laps. And right around the middle part of the 2007s, right in through there between 2000 and maybe 6 and 2010, coaching became really commoditized, to the point that people would say coaching and they would mean a lot of different things. That's one of the reasons that we went to some effort to brand our particular approach, because we wanted to be clear, this is what we're talking about. This is a really humanistic, positive, people forward way of working with the client. There are other approaches that are different than that, and they're not bad. They're good too. They're just different than this approach. And I think that that's really important. And I think it does create that clarity in that container, as you call it, so we know what we're doing together.
Yeah, here's something else it takes a whole book to describe, actually. It isn't one of those ideas that can boil down to a sentence or two, but there are things within your articulation that are coaching and things that aren't. So the temptation, the cynic might go, oh dear, here we go again. It's like coaching could be all possible things. It's like anytime two people are having a bit of a gig together, that's coaching, and it can apply in absolutely any circumstances. And that isn't what you guys get up to. I think there are a number of fence lines where if they're crossed, you've now left coactive coaching. You're no longer doing that. And
Right.
that really is valuable in terms of an approach. What have you seen in the years where you've instructed and educated people in this approach? What have you seen in that regard in terms of people understanding, say, what I call the fence lines, the boundary lines for what no longer is coactive coaching?
You know, it's really interesting. In the beginning, it was much harder. Our approach, coactive coaching, is really very humanistic. And it has although it's not religious, it has a spiritual foundation to it. And in the very beginning of our work together, too fluffy, too lightweight, too much about relationship, Northern California woo-woo. So it's much harder to really help define the boundaries of coactive coaching clearly. And what I found over the years is that the world has caught up a little bit. And now, especially people inside organizations are really understanding that coaching skills and working with a coach is really, really a positive approach. So there's more acceptance of the way that we view the coaching relationship and more value placed on it. And that makes it much easier to define those guidelines. You know, we've also written a book on leadership called Collective Leadership: 5 Ways to Lead. And I think whenever the coach is, although I do give advice and suggestions, whenever they become attached to the agenda, whenever the agenda is about the coach and about the coach's idea and about what the coach thinks and what coach says, you've left the territory of collective coaching. Whenever the coach becomes so attached to solving the problem rather than really serving the client, you've left the reservation of collective coaching.
That's quite interesting, because there, I suppose you need complementary disciplines which are on the other side of that fence line, such as training, educating. You know, it's like in the military, it's like, look, you will sit there and I will explain to you how to assemble and disassemble this rifle. That's
right. And that really is not maybe the best time for the application of powerful questions.
Yeah, I'm not
what
going
do
to
you think about whether you should shoot the person or not? You know?
Exactly. Okay, well, super definition. There are some tremendous echoes of that in a book that spawned many other books and courses of study called The Trusted Advisor. And they talk about the difference between selfishness and self-obsession. Both of which sound quite stark as attributes, but self-obsession is just what you quite humorously share is like caring about like what's going on with the roast in the oven and whether it's like, you know, 2 liters or 1 liter of milk that I need to get and so forth. That's self-obsession. It's just losing track of that person in front of you and the dialogue you're having, and just wondering more about yourself. Do I sound smart here? Am I doing well? Am I the best?
Am I looking good? Am I doing it right? Absolutely.
Yeah. And instead just being with them. So there were actually throughout the book, Karen, there were a lot of lovely echoes from some ancient authors and some modern ones who've, I think, received general accolades. Related to the container, can you maybe just share a little bit about the power triangle? I thought this is quite a accessible visual and quite a worthy point of access into the book.
It's simple and it's clear.
Yeah.
Before I answer the question, I just want to comment on what you said about the wisdom of lots of other people. I don't think there's anything new under the sun. I love collective coaching. I think that what we put forward and the context that we presented in is useful, but it's not like, I think it's completely innovation. I'm a product, in essence, of my husband, of everything he's ever read and every person he's ever spoken to, and the model and our approach have been contributed to by numbers and numbers of teachers and people and Henry's mother, for goodness sake. So
Yeah.
I both am responsible for it and I'm not. So the power triangle is just a way to define the power in a coaching relationship, because, I said earlier that relationships are important. Where the power lies is really, really important to be clear about. If I'm leading a course in front of a room with a group of people, I have a certain power, right? That is neither good nor bad. I just need to recognize that that's true.
Yeah.
So in the coaching relationship, the coach and the client are giving power to the relationship. So the coach understands that whatever comes out of the coaching comes out of the way that they're holding the client in relationship, that container you were talking about. And the client understands that whatever comes out of the coaching relation, whatever great stuff happens in the coaching comes from the way that they're leaning into that relationship that the coach is offering. And it just keeps the client from thinking, oh my God, the coach is so brilliant. They have all the answers for me. And I'm just this lowly little client, That's really interesting doing something like that in a place like Japan, where the power differential is ingrained into their culture. They have two different languages for superior and less superior conversations. And who is the superior is a cultural as well as a structural thing. So it's been a lot for them to navigate, to figure out how to have a coaching relationship that doesn't exist in, because it's their whole world.
So what do you do?
Talk to them and find out what works and find out how they want to go about it. And I think they finally decided that for coaching relationships, the most appropriate language to use was the informal language. And so all Japanese coaches design that with their clients, at least last I heard. I don't know, I'm kind of out of touch, but they design with their clients that this is an informal relationship where the power is given to the relationship and the coach is not more powerful than the client. Therefore, we're going to use the informal relationship. Informal language. And it sounds like a small thing, but it's really, really profound for people.
I had a preliminary introduction into Japanese when I was in high school and first year university. And
wow.
And when I went on student exchange in 1993 to Hokkaido, and when I came back, I quite acutely offended my university professor in the way that I was speaking, because she said, you speak like grade 10 boys. And it was like this, of course I do. That's who taught me Japanese. And
right.
but it was making all manner of faux pas with quite a dignified professor lady who was Japanese. So I understand somewhat intimately what you mean by those. There's actually formally, by the way, there's 5 layers.
Yeah. Oh, so that's true.
There's a set of like it's like prepositions and maybe nouns that are reserved for royalty. And that's just sort of this elite crust of the grammar.
Thank you.
Being unpolished as valuable. That I've seen that in one other place that I can remember, and it was such a delight to read that. It's a very short little passage. You could blink and miss it. But can I just ask you to like riff on that a little bit, being unpolished and the value of being unpolished?
Well, I think the world is craving authenticity and immediacy. I know in coaching, most of what happens in the magic of the moment. And when people are too put together, I find anyway, that it's more about the presentation than it is about the right here, right now interaction. So if you can let go of all that spit and polish and all of that sort of looking good and putting it together for the other person and just show up as you are, something really real and meaningful can happen between two people. Rather than us going through the motions. I am going to do this and I am going to do that. And I'm a professional and you don't want to offend anybody, but by and large, having it all figured out ahead of time doesn't leave room for magic.
Can I share with you where I saw it elsewhere?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to hear.
So when people write cold emails and make cold calls because it's their job to sell, there's a language, there's a tone and a tenor that comes through there, and the reader or the listener is incredibly attuned to it. It's like, this does not bear the marks of ordinary
Yes.
discourse.
Yes.
And usually, if you want to deal with that, when you instruct somebody in how to do that craft more effectively, almost everything comes down to reducing slickness and polish, so that you can get back to an organic, authentic voice.
I love that.
And
Organic. I love that word, organic.
yeah, I mean, it should come right out of the compost of you know, true human interaction, like a life that you would actually live and lead. And so if you and I meet at a friend's dinner party or something, I would never speak and engage with you in the way that shows up in these phone calls or emails. And so channeling somehow the ordinary language, including its lack of polish.
Yes.
So rather than saying, I would love to meet with you at 3:30 on a Tuesday, you know, this coming week, you know, please click the link below. Leaving some space to be like, oh my God, I don't have my calendar in front of me. You know, it's sorry, I should have it here. Give me a sec. Which is the condition in which we like find our fellow creatures in a, you know, in a
much
state
of the time.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So that was the other place that I had seen it. And look, that's actually a difficult job, and I believe an honorable craft, so long as it's done honorably. And I just saw tons of echoes of that. So it's why it stood out. And I actually think a lot of professionals who have to undertake either the sales craft or coactive coaching could really do with a second pass on that very short passage.
I love that.
Yeah. There might be, I'll explore later as I kind of contemplate that section, whether there's an alternative to unpolished, because it sounds like something you don't want. But anyway, tremendous observation. Karen, is there some, you've been sharing and teaching this for a while. Is there some section of your thinking and writing around coactive coaching that you, as an expert or an authority on this, just think is so interesting and important, but you tend not to see people drawn to it?
What a great question. I personally like the breadth and depth of the coactive model. I think there's a lot in there. I think you can unpack it and expand it for a long time. And still, even now, I find that people want the solution. They want the answer. They want to go for it. They want to know, what does coactive mean and where do we stand on this, rather than really enjoying and appreciating the conversation. Like, one of the things I'm really enjoying about this interview is that it's a conversation. We're going back and forth, and we're not solving all of the world's problems. We're just having a chat. And I think that sometimes that gets stepped over in the desire to have the definitive answer and to have academic validation.
So why does that happen? Is it because the places that it's applied is like does it change if you go from the workplace to the synagogue?
I think it's endemic in our world. I think we are driven, especially in Western culture, we are driven to outcome and results. We're just driven to it. And we're habituated to it, and we're running for it all the time. And social media hasn't helped much. How do you have a conversation on Twitter? So
Yeah.
I think it's really important to take the time to slow down and drop in. And I understand in the workplace we have deliverables and we need to be able to produce them. And I understand in our personal life we have, things we have to get done and things our children need, but just slowing down a little bit and expanding the conversation will actually have our action be more effective and more impactful than if we just flick all the time.
Hmm.
But maybe I'm just getting old. Maybe I'm just getting old.
Yeah, time to retire to the cliffside of the mountaintop and take a cross-legged pose and stare to the middle distance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I certainly can understand that that's something hard to take on. Think about a common context that we encounter, which is managers in a workplace. They feel their own set of pressures. They don't show up unencumbered with their own pressures to achieve something in that conversation.
Exactly. And what I find when people start really trusting even a little bit this coactive coaching conversation, managers can relax a little bit because they know they're not alone. A lot of managers think that they have to solve all the problems. So that's their job, is to solve people's problems. And they miss that they've got a lot of problem solvers who are working underneath them. And those problem solvers just need to be empowered. I mean, I make it sound like, well, why don't you just do that? It's like falling off a log, right? I know it has its challenges, but I think it's really important to use your human resource.
That's I mean, maybe something exciting about that is that it would take a long time. I mean, that's a project you can enjoy working on for more than 3 coaching sessions, right?
Absolutely, for the rest of your life.
Yeah. We set an hour. Do you mind if we just keep going for another 30 minutes so we can?
Sure, I can go for another 30 minutes. Sure.
Can you? Okay. Well, thanks.
Yes, I can.
Appreciate that.
Actually, it would be good for me to hop off at like 5:20. If we can.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. If
Okay,
I'm not
great.
already helping you hop off, you just wave your hand or something.
I'm a good hopper.
Okay, super. I said that the unpolished section was short. A section that is not short that I'd really like to direct folks to. In fact, there's a handful of our clients, Karen, where I will specifically share that chapter just so that they don't go, the book's big, I don't want to read the whole thing, and they miss that chapter. And this is the whole section on intuition. Intuition. What a kind of ringing defense of intuition, including its potential shortcomings. Like to me, quite a lovely account of there's reasons not to let intuition do all the work. But here's a very doable approach to it. Can I just get you to speak about that word, what it means, how it evinces itself in a coaching conversation?
So this is personal to me. I don't want to speak for the whole of Coactive, but in my experience, opening myself to my intuition allows me to tap into my instinctual self, my senses, right? I don't have to be right about what I'm sensing. I just need to bring forward that I'm sensing something. When I do that, things begin to shift energetically. So I might say, client, I have an instinct that you're really not happy with your job, that you really want to leave. That's my sense. What do you think? And the client will, what do you sense? And the client will go, oh no, I'm really happy at my job. What I'm happy about is this. And it doesn't matter that my interpretation of what I was sensing was inaccurate. What mattered was that I brought it forward and the energy shifted and moved. So for me, it's kind of like a I think of coaching and leadership and really pretty much everything I do in life as an act of service. It's something that I offer. It's a bringing forward instinct in my senses with something I'm picking up energetically and offering it up to see if anybody wants to play with it.
Because it's
We
an
don't.
act
We're trained to know the answer. No one said in my third grade class, "Oh, dear darling Karen, what's your sense of the answer to that question?" Like I had to get the grade, right? So we lose, touch with our innate ability to sort of feel energy shift and change, and we lose our courage to bring that forward and offer it because we're trained to have the right answer.
How good is your intuition?
I don't think intuition is good or bad. I think I have access to it. I think it's accessible. I think intuition is accessible or not accessible. I think my intuition is accessible most of the time and not all the time.
So for you personally, that's changed over time, how accessible it is?
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. Yes.
Yeah.
Because like anything else, it develops with practice. The more you look there, the more experience you get, the more you find, the more you try things out, the more it comes back to you. And it's sort of a learning journey. It's been hugely developmental for me. I am absolutely not the person I was when I started CTI in 1992. You wouldn't recognize me. I had my head up my butt pretty much. Not that I don't now.
Yeah, well, that's a club with many members, and I'm a card carrying member myself.
Me too. I do think we all have intuition. It's not that some people are more intuitive than other people. I've had people tell me I'm not intuitive. I don't believe that for a minute. I think we have different access to it. Some people have more access than other people.
You talk about where it shows up physiologically.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting mystery.
Well, that's one of the ways we sense the world around us. Just think about before we were so, evolved and cultured, we could sense, hunting and being hunted. We could sense what was happening around us. And where do we sense things? In our body, So that's one place to look. It's not the only place to look for what your intuition might be picking up. For me, it's a powerful one, but for other people, that's not as important. Some other things are more important.
I think that I harbor this sort of lovely fantasy, and that's probably all that it is, but that there will be discoveries in the next 100 or 200 years that will absolutely shine the most enjoyable light on things like us saying, I have a gut feeling that, and we'd be like, oh, I know exactly, I could locate where that feeling is happening, and it's no longer kind of mysterious ghosts in the body or the brain, but we
or
can
some
really tell you.
Ungrounded idea that somebody is making up. It's actually tangible and real.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, plus, we're only using 10% of our brain. What's happening at the other 90%?
What the heck is going on in there?
What the heck's going on up there?
Yes. Yeah. Like these old maps. I'm Canadian. And
oh, are you?
The old original cartographers, they would sort of map out in great detail our East Coast rivers and the location of mountains and where tributaries went. And then it just blurred into this huge, vast expanse, and there was no coastline on the other side at all. Just goes on forever, wraps all the way around. It becomes Europe. Yeah,
where in Canada? Where in Canada do you live? Where in Canada are you from?
Southern Alberta. So,
Alberta.
Yeah, that's right above Montana. Yeah, it's very, very pretty and expansive country. They call it Big Sky country, which just seems like a totally redundant or useless description until you show up there and you think, oh, that's what they mean.
That's what they mean by big sky.
Wow. like the sky, just for whatever reason, it's something like the contrast between the flatness of the land and the occasional like vaulting mountain, and the cloud formations maybe too, but the sky just seems immeasurably massive in the prairies. Yeah, it's quite cool.
You make me want to visit.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lovely place. Not a lot of people, lots of sky. Yeah. There's a challenge still with intuition that was just rolling through my head. Which is sometimes I think if you're sitting in the coach seat and you're listening to it into intuition, it can be firing with so much signal. I don't mean noise, right? I mean signal. Like these are that for you to communicate that, you would commandeer the vehicle, right? And so there's still, I think even for those who have been able to develop that skill, there must be this challenge of curating what from intuition is worthy to bring into being in the conversation.
Oh, I love where you're looking. What is valuable and what's the timing? You know, I am really fast as a person. I process quickly, I think quickly, I move quickly. And I've had to really learn to be not just response to my intuition. You know, I've had to teach myself to sit with it and pay attention to when the timing was to bring something forward, if at all. You know, I've coached clients, for instance, I've coached clients that were having difficulty in their marriages. And I've known probably a year at least before they did that the marriage was over. But they needed to come to that conclusion on their own. My telling them it would not have, that's an intuition that would not have served anything, you know, and then there would be a time maybe where I would need to say, you know, here's what I've been sensing for a little while and bring that forward. But by and large, it's just easier to know that you know that and to see if how the client arrives at that conclusion on their own. Timing is incredibly important in coaching.
What does that do for you to carry that knowledge after the call, either knowledge that you've shared or knowledge that you have kind of decided not to in that moment? Does it exhaust you?
No, it doesn't. For me, I'll just be totally self-revealing. For me, it's about love. Coaching is a way of loving. And, you know, knowing something about another person and being able to hold a space for them without getting in that space yourself, being able to hold that container for a client to come to their own realizations without having to crawl into the container yourself is an act of love. No, it's of the things that exhaust me in life. That's like number 5,887. It doesn't exhaust me at all.
Do you want me to just keep asking random different things until I find a winner that does exhaust you, like personal taxes?
Taxes exhaust me. Insurance, forget about it.
Yeah,
I have a list. Let me tell you, it does nothing to do with proactive coaching, but why do people? Oh.
But do you so in the folks that you have taught and sort of enfranchised into this way of coaching, have you seen variety there where some people aren't great at it because they can't, it's too much energy to carry, it's kind of an emotional burden, or they get exhausted?
Yeah, I find people sort of have difficulty on two ends of the scale. Either they can't get out of their own way enough, they can't get out of their own sort of preoccupation with how they're doing and how they're looking to be able to start sensing, or they're completely wide open and they don't have this container really solidly. So they're right in there with the client, feeling everything and sensing everything that the client is going through. And that is exhausting. And I think coaching goes through all kinds of levels of mastery, but I think one of the levels is really having the compassion to be able to witness whatever the client is experiencing, and having the self-authority and wisdom about yourself to be able to witness it without getting right in the middle of it.
Mhm. Would you say that, here's an unresolved question for me. It came in my notes when I was reading your book several times. So it showed up from a bunch of different chapters and a bunch of different topics you're addressing. Is the coach and the coachee, are they symmetrical or asymmetrical?
I don't understand the question.
So they're coactive, right? So there's a hint in the title, which is that there's a kind of peership. And yet there are all these unique disciplines and sort of and attitudes that the coach needs to take on to be successful. And in many places, it's a language of service and servanthood, and a real, almost a posture of generosity toward the coachee. So I think it is not a peership. These are really, these two characters are coming from very asymmetric position in this engagement.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, I think it's very asymmetrical. Very, very asymmetrical. I have a particular role. I'm holding the container for the client. And I do not expect the client to put that same thing back in the relationship. We're both empowering the relationship, but we're empowering it differently. I'm empowering it by holding that container and offering whatever I have to the client for their own agenda. The client is empowering it by bringing their full self to the coaching and by leaning in. So I think it's at its best asymmetrical. I get uncomfortable actually when clients try to make it symmetrical. How was your Thanksgiving? How was your vacation? I don't care about my Thanksgiving and my vacation. I care about you,
Yeah.
And sometimes it serves the relationship a little bit, but by and large, I just assume would dispense with all that attempt to make us pals, because we're not.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
It does. I feel like there's a lot there, and so I'll back up a step and share probably the reason why I had such a recurring curiosity about symmetry.
Yeah,
or
I'd love to hear.
It's our job to help corporations, usually smaller companies, build their academies. So how are we going to teach and learn our folks here this year? And somebody's got to come along and figure out a curriculum and organize it all and so forth. And people usually tend to start, Karen, on either sales or leadership. So even though there's all kinds of different denizens inside the country that is your organization, you don't start with the accounting folks or the coding engineers or whatever. It's sales and leadership, which is usually the start place. And those are two places where coaching shows up straight away. So the leadership one might be quite obvious because it's coaching their own folks. And then in sales, actually, it's less about coaching salespeople and more about the tenor of the conversation you have with a client. Can you, what are your listening skills? What are your question asking skills? How do you create and hold space for a conversation where there's asymmetry?
Yes,
one of
absolutely.
you
That's great.
would like to walk away with money, and the other one of you would like to walk away with services, potentially.
Yes.
So I think that topic it just takes a long time to try to find where's the line where it's asymmetry is desirable and where is it not desirable, and how do you polish that. So I think that's why it came up quite a lot, is because it seemed to me like one of the real black belt level sub skills within this discipline you discuss.
I love what you're saying, and I think, like, what would it be like for a salesperson to be completely transparent? What would it be like for me if I was considering a service and the salesperson were to say very forthrightly, so we're in a little bit of different places. I'm hoping to walk away from this conversation with a sale. And you're hoping perhaps to walk away with some services that are going to work for you and meet your need. So our job in this conversation, my job is to assist you in determining whether or not the thing that I'm selling is right for you. That's my job, is to assist you in discovering whether or not this is a fit for you. And your job is to bring your whole self to the conversation and be really, really transparent about that and be honest with me and say yes and no and all that kind of stuff. That would be so cool to have sales conversations at this place like that, because all this other foldy roll is just to let us smoke.
Yes,
There's an
yes.
honesty to that. I'm here to make a sale. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. I have an ace up my sleeve. See, here it is, right there.
Yeah, there we go, right there.
And if it
And I'll
behooves me to use it in the middle of our card game, I'll just reach right in there and pull it out, you see.
right. And if it serves you, let me know. And if it doesn't, let me know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I can tell you, because that's another author interview theme that we've pursued, that the thinking is going that direction.
There's like 5 different arenas that I never managed to have the time to really get into. Education is one. Another is sales. I would have loved to have done coach training with salespeople, because I think I have been well sold so many times in my life, and I love the experience of it. I love that. And I think it's something worth really doing well, honestly, cleanly,
Yeah.
directly. I really love that you're pursuing that.
Karen, how should I am afraid that we don't have indefinite time to have this conversation. We like to end with just asking you how you would like to be found and on what basis. Are you engaging people as a speaker, as a thinker, as a talker, or would you like people to pick up the book? How would you like people to track you down and find you?
I'd like people to read the book. They can contact me at Karen@coactive.com if they want to talk to me directly. I'm semi-retired, so I'm not looking to make a big name for myself, but I'm still interested in people leaning into coactive coaching.
Okay, super. Well, we will direct them that way.
Thank you so much. I've loved our conversation.